first Russia, and explain how other countries, as you explained in the statement, how they are going to be involved in this tender process. Just give us a breakdown of how many other countries are involved, how many more signatures we need at the moment.
Okay, second one.
My name is Chris Yellen from EE Publishing.
Thank you. Hello, my name is Chris Yellen from EE Publishers. My question is addressed to Dr. Barnard. In the initial press statement received firstly from Rosatom and then reissued word for word by the Department of Energy, it states absolutely clearly in plain English that everybody can understand that the Department of Energy had not only entered in an agreement with the Russians for the construction of 8 VVER nuclear reactors, but also the agreement included wide-ranging technology cooperation. So it's stated absolutely clearly that not only did this agreement include the construction, the actual construction of these nuclear reactors, but also wide-ranging technology agreements. In the light of that, can you assure us that that was in fact a mistake by the Department of Energy, and that the press release was issued perhaps too hurriedly or wrongly, and that no agreement has been reached with the Russians for the construction of 8 VVER reactors in South Africa at this stage? If you could just make it clear, because press releases should ensure clarity, but this particular one did exactly the opposite, it would seem. Thank you.
My name is Hajra Omarji from ANN7. A question for Mr. Barnard. The nuclear build program is not in line with the NDP, which cautions against it. Can you explain that? Can you also tell us if the discussion around our nuclear build program was generated out of meetings between President Jacob Zuma and Russian President Vladimir Putin? Can you also tell us at what stage are considerations around costing? Are we looking at a Russia or China or France building it and then selling us electricity? Or are we considering investing in the project ourselves? And if Eskom will play any role?
Philip de Wet from the Mail and Guardian. Acting DG, you carefully phrased it in the passive, saying that there was a communication problem at some point. Was that your mistake as the department? Was that our mistake as the media? Or was that the mistake of the Russians? In addition, you say that the previous minister visited various. Would you be so kind as to name those vendors, please?
Thanks. I think so. Thank you for those questions. I think some of them is more than one, but let's deal with it. I think I will make use of the panel that's with me. So some of them I will handle, and some of them I will hand over to specifically my colleague, the DDG for Nuclear, Mr. Mbambu. Mr. Mbambu, you can maybe just on the first one from Eyewitness, and then on the one on the EE Publishing, and I will deal with the third one. And then also with the fourth one. Thanks.
Thank you, Dr. Barnard, and the members of the media for the question. I think I'd like to start by giving a bit of a background before I answer the question, how many countries are involved in this initial process that the department is busy with. I need to highlight as Dr. Barnard has indicated, that we've got a nuclear energy policy for 2008 that was approved. This policy set out the government framework and the vision around which how government intend to proceed with the expansion of the nuclear build program. Some of the key elements of this nuclear energy policy revolves around the fact that as South Africa, we want to be self-sufficient. We want to be able to exploit the nuclear technology for peaceful use purposes. We want to be involved in the mining. We want to be involved in the areas of the entire nuclear fuel value chain. I think what has been happening is, at the moment, a lot of people seem to focus only on the 9.6 gigawatts, which is mainly for the generation of electricity. But if you look into the program, we're looking into the entire program, which involves training, skills development, job creation, regulatory infrastructure, fuel manufacturing capabilities, components manufacturing, integration into the international markets to supply the components that have been manufactured in South Africa, being able to manage the back end of the nuclear fuel cycle, which deals with the issues of radioactive waste, and the entire nuclear value chain. That is what South Africa is looking for in terms of expanding our nuclear build program. And another key factor is the localization of the manufactured components. Because as South Africa, we're looking to create jobs, we're looking to establish industries through the rollout of the nuclear build program. And so, in a nutshell, those are the main driving factors that I'd like the members of the media to be aware of. And another important factor that I need to mention is that as a country, we are a member state to the International Atomic Energy Agency. In that respect, our work has to comply with the international treaties that the country has acceded to. One of the important treaties that I need to mention is the Treaty on the Non-Proliferation of Nuclear Weapons. As part of the work that the department has been doing, there is a number of technical sub-working groups that are looking into the various aspects of the nuclear build program, which I've outlined earlier. And in doing that, we've got the sub-working group that's looking into the issues of corporate financing, procurement, issues looking to the regulation, safety, others looking into the issues specifically for industrialization, localization, skills development, others looking into issues looking around the matters of safety. So what the department has been doing is that through this very highly technical sub-working group, it's been busy rolling out the nuclear build strategies that seeks to make sure that we make recommendations to the principals for decisions to be made, technical recommendations, because these structures consist of the industry players coming from the state-owned entities as well as interdepartmental experts. And so you've asked a question to say why we're doing this. We're at the stage where we're preparing for the procurement process. I need to highlight that the procurement process has not started. What the department is doing is we've gone into the study tours to get to see what these potential vendor countries, what technologies they offer, how they could support South Africa. And in that regard, as one of the requirements that we need to make sure is that we sign intergovernmental agreements so that we see what each country's offerings are, and then we are able to say when the procurement process starts, that's when we know what this particular country has to offer in terms of its nuclear technology capabilities in addressing the needs of South Africa. And then you've asked how many countries and why Russia. South Africa has got nuclear cooperation with a number of countries. And I need to mention, the Russian Federation, the US. We are planning also to sign an intergovernmental agreement with the French. Right now in October, we're planning to sign an intergovernmental agreement with the Chinese. We will also be planning to sign an intergovernmental agreement with the Japanese, so that we are in a position to gather all the information of what these nuclear vendor countries has to offer in terms of addressing the various aspects of the nuclear program that I have indicated. And then you've asked the question, why Russia? It's a matter of, as we are negotiating this agreement, as they become ready, that the negotiations have been concluded, then we undertake the process that we finalize the intergovernmental agreement, and then that gets signed. And we proceed with a process of preparing for the procurement process, which I've indicated that it has not started. So the work that we're doing creates a foundation for when government decide that it wants to now start the procurement process, what type of a procurement process that the government would want to implement for this program. Is it an open tender? Is it a closed tender? Is it a government to government? All of those will be taken into account when a final decision is being made. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Mbambo. I think there's just one or two that I want to add, because there's 4 questions. Just on the first one, the signing of the agreement with Russia is not the first one. There's also signing. The first one actually was with South Korea. The same agreement that was signed, but with different technology, different background. In terms of the question from EE publishers, if there was a mistake, no, it wasn't a mistake. What has happened, if you see the development, there was the 22nd of September, there was a statement been issued. There was followed up by a statement the 23rd after the completion of the minister's visit to the 58th Congress in Vienna. And then that was followed up with a clarification one when we saw this misunderstanding on Saturday last week. So just in terms of I think where the misunderstanding comes from is that each country has its own technology, and to procure eventually for 9,600 megawatts, you're going to need to utilize the different technologies that's been offered by those various vendors or countries. And that will differ. In one case, for instance, the technology for Russia, in this case, will boils down to 8. But for another technology, might boils down to 6, or the other to 10. We don't know at this stage. As we sign and as we get agreements into their technology, that will be clarified. So with respect to the Russians, their technology that they're using, the so-called WVER technology, basically is for that capacity will handle 8 generators to handle 9,600 megawatts. So that's the clarification around why that was stated in such a way. So the agreement said that they will sign with us to assist with the technology development for future. So it's not been said it's procured with the Russian Federation. Just say that's what I can offer South Africa in this. The next one that's been signed later this month with France will have a different type of wording regarding the numbers of generators. So I think we just need to get that, and that comes back to my last open statement to say that it's about language. It's a common language that's been used around this. The third one, in terms of the nuclear build program not in line with the NDP, and some other questions around it I think what's important is that the NDP is a document that gives us direction how to turn the country around and how to take it into the near future. It doesn't spell out specific. It's not a blueprint per technology. It doesn't tell you, if you talk about energy, how we have to deal, for instance, with clean fuels. How we have to deal with octane concentration in the country. That doesn't deal with that. That is the purpose of the NDP. The NDP is to give us directions, like a torch shining into a dark night. And when it comes to nuclear, the direction the torch is pointing us to say that nuclear is there, but please, when going to nuclear direction, just look at all options, investigate it thoroughly. And that was what happened last year and we're currently doing. We haven't signed anything. There's no sign that we're going to build XYZ power stations. It's to say in our planning, there's 9,600 been allocated for nuclear. Now, how to deal with that? How are we going to build it? What's going to be the technology built? I think that's important for us at this point in time, to make sure that what is in there in the NDP says, if you want to go that route, need to look carefully. And there's also the question, part of it was then to say, what is then the cost of it? It's all part of it. We can't make it a cost determination if we don't know the technology that we're going to utilize. So it's all linked to each other. So then that will then eventually bring us to that point. But I think it's important that it's part of the mix of generation that we're dealing with. And we eventually have to also weigh up the various technologies against each other. The issue about the fact that there was a meeting between the various presidents of the two countries, it happens constantly. I mean, the president's going to go to China, the president will go eventually to the DRC, and it's all countries that we have energy-related agreements with. And what happens beyond such visits is various treaties, various agreements. There's just one outflow of such an agreement between the two countries was this energy one with Russia. And we also will make the information available when the minister is leaving for France for the signing of this agreement with the French. So that will also be made available in the same way. We'll issue an agreement statement, we'll issue the finalization of that visit of the Minister of Energy. The comment about Eskom, the role of Eskom in that, it was a loaded question, so I think I need to just deal with that. We have Eskom here, but I think that question needs to be dealt with government in this regard. Is in the State of the Nation address of President Zuma, the 17th of June, mention has been made that the state of the SOEs, the state entities linked to energy, need to refocus and reform to also address our energy needs and the energy challenges we're currently facing. So it also means the way that Eskom have been dealing with generation capacity and other services need to be considered in this way. The same as NEXA, is the SOE. I think it's important that Eskom, we know, is build, operate and own, or build, own and operate generators. In a nuclear, we might need to go a different route. That depends on the technology and it depends on the model that we will choose at the end of the day, because those are linked to each other, and that will then clarify what is going to be the role of Eskom in that. But for right now, I think it's important to just consider that Eskom, as you know, is currently building two large coal-fired power stations. So, and they are running a nuclear power station. So, in that context, it will be considered when you get there. Around the question from Mail and Guardian, the mistake, I think I dealt with it. It is somewhat linked with the question from e-publishers. So, thanks, Program Manager.
Tandy, is it possible for you to hear us from Cape Town?
I thank you, Dr. Barnett, and the members of the media. One of the questions was asked as to what vendor countries were visited. I think I need to indicate that these vendor countries were visited during the period November, December in 2013. The countries visited was South Korea, Japan, China, France, the USA, Russia. The 6 countries that were visited. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to take another round here, but then we must move to Cape Town because there are journalists also at the media center there. I'm going to start at the back. Those are the hands that I saw first. The lady with the black top, the gentleman in front of Pumla, and the two ladies here in front of me, the red jackets. And
Yolandi Groenewald from City Press. I just want to know what government-to-government procurement process would be. Would it just be that you exclude other countries? And then I want to know when will the roadmap be available? It was supposed to come out in November last year, but it still hasn't been released.
Hi, it's Angelo Coppola here from China Central Television. 2 questions. Firstly, on a policy matter, if nuclear has been part of the IRP and long-term energy procurement, why was the pebble bed modular reactor canned in terms of its research? And then secondly, if, as Dr. Barnard has put it, these are all different agreements because they're different technologies, why won't you release the Russia agreement because it doesn't relate to anything else? Thank you.
Good day, Acting DG and other members of the department. My name is Simone Herodin for Daily Sun. I have a question related to the safety of workers. DG, earlier on you mentioned the safety record of Pelindaba. But just on Tuesday evening, the public protector revealed to us that she's busy with an investigation on workers at this Nexa plant in Pelindaba who are suffering adverse medical conditions as a result of their employment at the corporation, and they also accuse Nexa of failing to provide them with medical treatment and compensation for diseases. So is there any specific policies that you will implement to see that this is not repeated in the future at the nuclear facilities? Thank you.
Good day. I'm Parashni Govender from Reuters. I just want some clarity, following Hadra's question. Has the government now decided that nuclear is the way to go, and will all energy, or maybe that's the wrong choice of words, will all efforts now be focused on going the nuclear route? And secondly, can you give us some time frames from when these agreements are going to be signed, and how long is it going to take to come into effect thereafter?
Thanks, Program Director, and also for the questions. First one on City Press. I'm going to ask Zimbabwe to deal with that one, and then the one on the one on China TV, Chinese TV, I will deal with that one, and the Daily Sun will ask Nexa CEO to deal with that one, and on writers I will do that one. So, Zimbabwe.
Thank you, Dr. Barnard. The issue that was asked was around the government-to-government procurement process. I need to indicate that the procurement of a nuclear build program is unique. It's not the same as any procurement of off-the-shelf technology that you put on the ground and it operates. However, I need to also highlight that in terms of what type of the procurement process will the government use to procure the nuclear build, that has not been decided. That is why we are at the stage where we're doing this preparatory work in order to be able to gather information from the various potential vendors. We take that information, we measure it against what the country's needs are, and then we present that to the government, for government to take a decision in the final analysis to say what sort of a procurement process will be used for the nuclear build. I mentioned example, I said there's an open tender process, there is government-to-government process, there is administrative processes, and these are the various methods of procurement process that we have seen in the international world in terms of the benchmarks that we have done, in terms of getting to understand how other countries have done procurement for the nuclear build program. And these various procurement processes that I'm talking about They are informed by the various countries' national interests as to what each country wants to do in terms of its nuclear energy policy. In terms of South Africa, I said our nuclear energy policy said we want to be self-sufficient. And so that will be one of the measures, the yardstick that will be used for when the procurement process is being implemented to decide what sort of a procurement process does the government want to use in procuring the nuclear technology. And at that stage, that process would be approved by cabinet, it will be voted, and a decision will be made to say, we're going for this. Is it a government to government? Is it an open tender? Is it a closed tender? Is it a combination of all of this? That decision we can't at this stage pronounce on because it has not been made. It will be informed by this preparatory work that we are doing. And so your question was, what sort of form does the government to government procurement process entail? And the answer that we should provide to you is that at that stage, when government has taken a decision as to what is the best procurement process that it wants to deploy in terms of rolling out the nuclear build, those details will then become available. But at this stage, none of the procurement processes has been decided as to how the nuclear build program will be procured. You've also asked about the roadmap. In my initial remark, I indicated that we are rolling out a program which addresses the various aspects of the nuclear build program, and those aspects are done by the interdepartmental teams that are highly skilled, working with experts from the nuclear industry. There's SOEs or state-owned entities. And these technical experts are currently developing a roadmap which provide the various milestones as to when specific decisions around the nuclear build needs to be made. Those decisions are recommended to the Energy Security Subcommittee of Cabinet, and that committee then make decisions on the program. And what then happens is these decisions are made on a phased decision-making approach. Whenever those decisions are being made, the department will ensure that it provides the necessary information so that the members of the public and the media are kept informed as to what specific decisions have been made in terms of the nuclear build. At this stage, the roadmap, it's a government document that guides how the process is being rolled out. It cannot be released at this stage because it then may compromise the process. So, on the nutshell, when various decisions addressing the various aspects of the nuclear build program are being made, those will be made, the department will make the information available in terms of updating the members of the public as to what specific decision has been made on the program. Thank you.
Thanks. The one from Daily Sun, Safety of Workers, Palindaba, the CEO of NEXA, Mr. Salani, he will deal with that. Thanks.
Thanks, Dr. Barnett, and good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. The issue around what the public protector was saying on Monday relates. Relates to an item of work that we've been dealing with for several years now. Certainly there is policies and there is regulation around how to deal with occupational diseases. Thank you. And in that respect, there are two acts which are very important. There is the OSH Act, and there is the COID Act. Because we are in a nuclear environment, there is also the National Nuclear Regulator Act that manage occupational diseases in nuclear plants, or even safety related to workers and the public. What has been happening is that some workers that worked at Pelindaba many years ago claim to have been affected by their work. And investigations were made, reports generated, and this has been handed over to the Compensation Commissioner who deals with occupational diseases on the basis of the COID Act. Also, these reports were shared with our National Nuclear Regulator, and on various occasions we've had to field questions from the public protector, who we are cooperating with on a regular basis, and we've given her and her investigators whatever information that she's requested. It was a surprise to us to see on Monday a press release that she's investigating Nexa. However, we think that it's within her right to ask the questions, but we have sent her to the Compensation Commissioner, and I don't think that information is being taken on board, that the workers have not been hurt by radiation. Some of them have hearing issues because of the type of work that we're doing, which is an occupational disease. And there is very little evidence from our reports that they were affected by radiation at all. We welcome the public protector to come, and we will certainly share the information with her as she requests further information. I don't know what other information should be requesting. Thank you.
Thank you. The other two questions that's still outstanding is the one from, my apologies, I don't write down the full name, but I know it's Chinese TV, but I know there's another acronym with it, so my apologies. But the question was in terms of the policy of IRP, and then why the Pebble-Bed model reactor program was then shelved. I think it's important that we also take cognizance that the IRP was published in 2010. The module reactor program was a couple of years back. The situations in Africa in terms of electricity supply at that point in time was totally different than what it was in 2007-8. So it changed the way we had to think about the supply of electricity. So at that point in time, it's a module reactors. That means it's done generate electricity in a more confined, small packages. Which, if we look to what the demand and the change in our demand for now and the future, is that it's mostly based on base load. So it means megawatts that we are requiring to supply the industry and to keep the economy going. So that is what we need, and hence why there's also then a change in terms of the type of technologies we're interested in, the type of mix of energy carriers we're interested in. So the needs have changed, and hence why at that point in time it was not, it was different needs at that point in time when the program started, but as it developed, we actually found ourselves more into baseload constraints as we currently are in. The question around will the Russian agreement and technology being made available, I think it have been dealt with, so that while we're busy with this, it's unfair to make that sort of information available, because there's certain aspects that can be used against the first signatures if that's been made available when we signed with other countries. The one from Reuters in terms of the nuclear the road and if there's any, why there's no certainty. I think it's important that it's part of a mixture of technologies that we're dealing with right now. 3 weeks ago, we signed the Grand Inga agreement to import hydro to South Africa and to other SADC countries. We're busy now with a new coal program. Different technology around coal and the way we're going to manage it. Gas is also, gas policy is finalized, and gas generation is going to play a much bigger role. So it's not only nuclear, it's a basket of supplies that we will utilize, and nuclear will form part of that. But it's all spelled out in the IRP, and also IRP that's updated, that's currently in the process to be on its way to Cabinet for final approval or a decision on what to do with the IRP revised one. And that will then spell out all of these different technologies differently, or what will be then the way forward. But I think it's important that it's a dynamic environment. Your demand and your supply keep on changing. That's why I have to update and look at it. But in terms of base load, it's decisions you need to take long term. You can't decide this year, I'm going this direction, and next year I'm going that direction in base load. In your medium and your low generation capacity items, you can do those changes, but not on your base load. So you need to make a firm decision. We're going in a certain direction, and then you need to follow that. I think there's one also on how long is the procurement process going to take that we need to cover. So if you can just deal with that, Mr. Bambu.
Thank you, Dr. Barnett. I think in terms of how long the procurement process will take, the work that is being done now seeks to go to that direction. But as to how long it will take, it will depend as to the type of the model that would be approved by government. That's the model that the government would want to use to procure the nuclear build program. Various models have got various timelines, and depending on which one has been used, if you use a combination, you'll get a different timeline. And it depends also as to the complexity of the model, the nature of issues that you have to deal with, and that then provides you an indicative time. But yeah, that's how it will happen. I think once we have got to that stage, when the procurement process has been approved, that's when we can give you a clear indication that we expect this to take this long. But at this stage, if I give you the details, that will be too early in the process to start indicating how long it will take when it has not been decided which one is it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We're going to move over to Cape Town now. Cape Town, can you hear me?
Yes, Thandi, we can hear you. We've got 4 questions in Cape Town.
Okay.
Yeah.
Hi, thanks very much, Thandi. It's Carol Payton at Business Day. Dr. Barnett, thank you very much for the opportunity. Just to clarify now, the words you used earlier were that in order to meet the demands of the energy mix of 9,600 megawatts, you said to achieve this, we will commence with the nuclear build program. So does that mean that number one decision of whether there will be a procurement at all, that decision is made? Is that decision now done? Could you clarify that? And if so, how come is it done if you don't know 2 important things? Number one, what the ILP update says, and number 2, what the financing model is and whether we've got the money for it. And then another question, if I may, just in terms of this work you're doing on the technology and deciding and going into the detail around all these technologies and isn't that actually really giving way too much shape to the tender process? Because these are all just water-cooled reactors. They aren't like enormously different, is my understanding. It's not as if they're completely different technologies. So could you perhaps tell us why you're going into such detail? Because it's actually going to define which country you choose before you've even got to a tender process. Thanks.
Okay, we'll move to Jan.
Thank you, Chair. Jan Jabeur for the Sunday Times. Firstly, how would you describe the role of the President in this whole process? Because that's been under a lot of discussion. Secondly, at what point will you announce to us the content of whatever it is that you signed or did not sign with the Russians? Thirdly, where is the Minister of Energy? Fourthly, you said, if I understood you correctly, because we still don't have your statement, that no information relevant to the public will be withheld. Who will decide what is relevant to the public? And finally, what is your budget?
And then we move to the third end quickly.
Hello, it's Melanie Gosling from the Cape Times here. Mine is also a question about financing. When Eskom called for tenders in 2008, the deal was called off because it was too expensive. Since then, nuclear power has only increased in price. What makes South Africa think now that we can afford it when we couldn't afford it then? And the second question is, there's some technologies, I think the South Korean one, and I'm not sure about China, that would not get authorization in the United States or Europe because of safety features. But South Africa is already talking to Korea and China. Does it mean that we are considering getting a fleet of nuclear reactors which could expose South Africans to a lower degree of safety than people in Europe or America would be?
And we take the last hand on this round from Cape Town.
Donald Presley, Fin24. Would the acting DG describe the recent trip to Russia and ongoing trips as a window shopping exercise? And secondly, does the Energy Department regret the scrapping of the PBMR program, which had been developed by South Africa in retrospect?
That will be all for this round, Tandy, in Cape Town. Back to you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Cape Town. I hope it's loud and clear from this side. While we're in Pretoria, it was very clear, so thanks for that. The first question from Business Day in terms of the fact that 9,600 megawatts of nuclear is going to be procured, and then what about the effect then on the IRP update? I think it's important that we're dealing now with nuclear. If we start talking about coal, say for instance the debate or the questions today was about coal, then we could ask exactly the same question. The allocation for coal that's been made in the IRP for now, it slips my mind, but I think it's 8,000 or somebody just can assist me. But just for arguments, don't quote me on it, but it's quite a substantial amount in the IRP. So for just now, I can't, I normally I can record. I think it's 2,500 megawatts. If you talk about that, for instance, then you can go into what sort of technology you want to do, what sort of size you want to do. Do you want to do 100 megawatts, 200, 300 megawatts? Do you discard coal, for instance? Or do you want to go for a mega 2,500 megawatt single power station? So then that will be the debate around the coal. But the same one is right now, we're busy investigating what coal options we need to go for the future. The quality of the coal, cleanness, etc., the size. So exactly the same we do with nuclear. The fact that we're now busy with this process is a process of investigation because it's in the IRP. But part of it is to say that's a technology we want to latch on. But there's a lot of things that need to happen beyond that. We can't make decisions if we don't have a full picture, and that's what we're doing right now. So it's in the IRP. And remember, I also just mentioned in my previous comment that on your baseline, you can't chop and change from one day to another, from 1 year to another. So you need to go in certain directions. So with that being said, I think it's important that the IRP update will and have reference to nuclear. So the detail of that will come out when it's formally published. But in terms of the nuclear, say that we procure already, that's not the issue. We haven't procured. We've said it's agreements we signed, as with the coal, as we signed with the Grand Inga on hydro. We didn't decide on what type of HV lines we're going to bring the electricity from Grand Inga to South Africa. Is it DC or AC we're going to use? I mean, sorry to go technical, but that detail is not there. Now we ask around the detail around this one. It's in there. We investigate. We have to make a final decision of all the options available. We need to know what we need to pick in terms of the various criteria we put down there. That we not run out of capacity. I think that's a very important issue that we keep on not putting on the table. It's security of supply. If we're not addressing that and we keep on debating, we're going to sit here in darkness in a couple of years' time because we haven't made a decision. So we have to make all of these available to ourselves to make a decision. And I think the decision will be made available. And that's the same with the nuclear. It's part of the whole package we investigate currently. A procurement haven't been decided upon. The financial model around it, yes, it has been, there's a comment been made around the fact that, and sorry, Cape Town's also jumping to that one, about the financing in 2008 that Eskom have then stopped it. But it was around the model that Eskom used in terms of build such a nuclear power station. Remember I mentioned build, own, operate. That's the Eskom model. So this might be different. So at that point, it didn't make sense for the Eskom environment. So we have to consider that it was a decision that the entity took. The issue about the technology different. I think it's important that for and just to come back to the business day question about technology is the same. No, there's a huge difference between the different technologies that's currently available. And hence why, and the different technologies determines also the way you're going to construct these units. So it is a huge difference between the, and then if Mr. Mbambu, I'll give you a chance now to come in there. The other one is the from Sunday Times. I think I quickly want to take that, the role of the president. Right now it's a technical team that sits here. We're dealing with the question around the policies of the Department of Energy. The president is meeting various presidents in his bilaterals, in signing of agreements. Those visits is something that's done by the presidency. We're dealing with technical issues, the agreement, and that was the purpose also of this news conference. The process how it will be made public. And I'm going to use the example of the Grand Inga agreement. There's some of the, for instance, business days. I know the journalist, she was there. The agreement was signed there. That agreement now has to go through for cabinet to decide what to do with the content of that agreement. From there, it then goes to Parliament. Exactly all agreements is following that route. So there's nothing unusual. This will also follow the same route. The issue about the budget, I think I dealt with in terms of the fact that it depends on a model that we're going to take it forward. We do need to compare the various technologies, coal, nuclear, gas, hydro, versus each other, and the function they're going to fulfill for the country. It's security of supply, it is job creation, it's economic development, it's industrialization. All of that's part of this whole package. And in the process with dealt, for instance, with the Renewable Energy IPP program, all of that factors are also included in there. That we need to make sure it's not only the megawatts we're receiving, it's also what is behind that to build a country's economy out. And that will also form part of what is the budget then eventually going to be. I don't know if you wanted to just talk about the issues about the technology.
Thank you, Dr. Barnett and members of the media. The question was around the restrictions on the transfer of technology if South Africa choose the technology coming from South Korea and Japan. And I think I need to reflect on the issues I've highlighted around what is the key factor for the South African nuclear policy. The key factor, one I've mentioned, was that as a country we want to be self-sufficient, we want industrialization, we want localization, and also technology transfer. And so as part of this work that we are engaged in, the preparatory work where we are signing these agreements, we are in a position to be able to see which of these vendor countries is potentially likely to offer South Africa. And if indeed, when we now get to the final stage, we will consider all of these factors, because if you say there's restrictions there, then we say we need to be able to advise accordingly to say, if we go for this particular one, there will be this potential restriction. If we go for this particular one, there will be this particular opportunities. But it's important to highlight that all of these countries have got different potential that they can offer to the South African nuclear build program. Remember, we said it's a nuclear build program. It's an entire nuclear fuel cycle. So they have got a potential to offer South Africa various aspects of the nuclear build program. It may not be the technology transfer. It may be training, skills development, or other elements of the nuclear build program. And so we are taking all of this into consideration when we are signing these intergovernment agreements with these countries. Thank you.
I just noticed that the question from Cape Town, there's also one on the South Korean technology not been approved in the USA. I think it's important here is that two things. The one is that some countries keep other technologies out of their country to protect their own interest. In our case, we deal as part of our international relationship with the International Atomic Energy Association. All of these technologies are being shared and are being verified through those international agreements and oversight. So we're part of that, and we're not going to venture into technologies that's going to be for us a risk. I mean, that's not a way. That's not part of the program. The program is far beyond that. That's why we also build capacity very much, so much in our nuclear national regulator, to ensure that our oversight in terms of technology, and also in Nexus case, that our oversight is to the best that's possible available in the world, to make sure that our technology choices are the correct ones for the country. Also the one from News, I think it's News 24, the last question, and the question on the reason for window shopping, I think that's been dealt with. We have said that we need to do this analysis of different technologies. And the grading of BPMR, I think I dealt with that one, actually. Thanks.
Right.
Tandy, we've got a follow-up. One from Cape Town, a quick follow-up.
Okay, let's take that one and then we'll come back to Pretoria.
Thank you. My apologies. I think two of my short questions were not answered. Where is the minister, and who will decide what content is relevant to the public? Because you said no content that is relevant to the public will be withheld, which means you can withhold anything else. Who makes that decision?
Thank you. That was all.
Where's the minister? It's today, a Wednesday. It's cabinet. The minister is at cabinet. I don't know if they're out yet, but it's a cabinet meeting. That's where the minister is. So, in terms of the what is the content, I think it will pretty much be the issue around what the technical issues are. So, the type of agreements that will be made available, but we can't when it's around the technical specifications and the way the technology will be offered. That's the issues that I think that's of importance that's relevant to that specific country or the vendor. So that's the sort of things that won't be normally being made available, except if the vendor is willing for us to make it available. It's not only on our side; it's also what the vendor, other countries is requiring not to make available. So thanks. Sorry for missing out on that one. I did notice. My apologies. I haven't answered that.
Dr. Barnard, I think Janjan is saying you didn't understand him very well. I'm apologies about that. Can you repeat, Janjan?
Sorry, my question isn't what won't be answered. My question is who will decide what is relevant to the public? Who will decide what cannot be answered?
there will be two aspects. One, as I already mentioned about the technical issues there. If it's coming from the vendor country, then that will be the who in that first case. And secondly, as I mentioned, it needs to go through cabinet. If it feels that it have a serious effect on, for instance, the financial modelling that we're talking about, then that might be considered not to be made available. Eventually, then it will go through to Parliament to ratify that decision. So that is the basic issue. But there's also, I mean, the whole aspect around the fact that we need to take cognizance of who we signed with and what they're going to feel comfortable with to make available. Thanks.
Okay, we're coming back to Pretoria, but I'd like us to give those who have not asked questions a chance first. So can we go with engineering news first?
Terence Cream, Engineering News. Just in terms of the preparatory phase, how much longer is it likely to endure? And when do you expect the actual procurement process to be formally launched? And secondly, did Cabinet jump the gun by proclaiming that Eskom would be the owner-operator of new nuclear reactors in South Africa? And have they had a change of heart around that, given what you've said earlier about that Eskom's procurement approach of build, operate and own probably wouldn't be appropriate in this context? And is it thirdly safe to assume that the RP update will be published ahead of the launch of any nuclear procurement program? Because the draft update is quite clear. Well, it raises a number of issues around the cost thresholds for new nuclear. I think around $6,500 a kilowatt installed. And it also says if it can't meet that, we have to look at other options that can meet those base load requirements. So can we have some guarantee that the RP visibility will be fully there before any procurement process begins? Thanks.
Jan Langer from Media 24. Regards to my colleague's question about the content of the statement on the 22nd of September. That statement states unequivocally that this agreement lays the foundation for 8 Russian units to be built in South Africa. Now, I've spoken to some of the other vendors and some analysts who says that you haven't issued a statement like this when you signed with South Korea. It's going to prompt the other vendors to not, spend a lot of money on their tenders. The quality of the tender process is going to be weakened by your clear standing and association with Rosatom. Can you comment on that, please? And secondly, gathering the statement on the 22nd implies a localization ratio of 15%. The $700 million, and Mr. Kirienko saying they're going to spend $10 billion in South Africa. That applies for a localization of around 15%, which is extremely low for international standards. And I'm told by analysts that Rosatom is notorious for low levels of localization. Can you please comment on that?
Sipho Masomboka for the Times newspaper. Just for an adequate clarity on the funding model and the budget for this program. If I understand you correctly, you say the funding model will be within Eskom's environment. Does this mean the cost will be carried by the consumer? And how much are we looking at here? Surely by now you have the projections. Thank you.
Chris Yellen from EE Publishers again. It's actually being widely reported in the Russian media that the deal has been done. In fact, they're reporting exactly what the DOE and the Rosatom initial press release said. Can you please give the Russians today a clear message, as clear as you've given to us, that a deal has not been done yet and that this is just a preliminary process which is just starting and it will involve many other countries? Just what you've told us now, could you convey that unequivocally to the world? Thank you.
Thanks for those ones too. Engineering news. I can start with that one about if there was a turnaround change in terms of cabinet decision on Eskom, from the previous build, own, operate. I think what we need to take cognizance of is that the circumstances have changed. If we refer to 2008, it was before the IRP was then published. I think also need to take cognizance of the fact that although in the Energy White Paper 1998, it stated very clearly that government need to take control of the future design and planning of energy needs and electricity needs of the country. But for a number of years thereafter, it was left to Eskom. Eskom was doing that on behalf of government. There was agreement, and it was seen that Eskom is making the decisions what technologies need to be implemented, etc., etc. So with the 2008 decision, it's at that point in time when that decision making was slowly but surely taken back into government's department's hands to look after it. And hence, in that regard, Eskom had to reconsider, that they can't make decisions on technology if it haven't been approved through the policy lines. And it's also, I think, we need to consider that the issue at that point in time. But I think also it's important is that as we venture into this discussion is around nuclear, is that the nuclear build programs in the world is different from any other type of technologies you're dealing with. So you need to manage it differently. So it can't be managed in a way you deal, for instance, and I'm going to repeat, coal-fired power stations. It's different type of technology, different type of means of modeling and financing. Also, that is your time length of technology is different. The coal-fired power station these days, 35, 40 years. Nuclear power stations, 60 to even, they're talking up to 80 years now of running. So your modeling is totally different, hence why you need to consider it in a different way. The question then, if it's going to be, and sorry, that's then also why, it's not the change, it's what the change has come with the fact that government, through the Department of Energy, is responsible for the planning of energy of future. So IRP is then the first one on electricity that spells out the long-term view, and in that context also Eskom had to then to make that decision, that the decision of new technology is taken by government and not by utility. The IRP, and when it's going to be published, the updated one, yes, it will definitely be before the procurement process is started. That's in the process right now. So how long it's going to take to be finalized and published, unfortunately can't tell you that. But from our side, we have done our work. The issue about the localization, I think I'm going to ask Mr. Mbambu to deal with that before you go. And then the issue about the funding model, I think I'm also going to ask Mr. Mbambu to deal with that. And the last one from e-publishers, that the message to Russia, we made it known now. It was made, sorry, apologies. It was made known during the agreement sign. There's a clear understanding between the parties what is in it. So no, I think for our case for today is to make it clear where we want to go, because of the fact that it's not only with the Russia that we sign deals, it's also other technologies. So there will be that have been made available to them during the 22nd, 23rd discussions with them. Maybe just another 15% localization.
Thank you, Dr. Barnett, and members of the media. You've talked about the issue of localization. What I need to indicate is that what we saw is the Russian offer, where they indicated that as part of the reestablishment of the South African industry, based on their international benchmark, international expertise in doing these types of work, they making an offer of $10 billion as part of establishing local industry for making sure that South Africa is ready to roll out the nuclear program. And so what then you would find is that various nuclear technology vendors would make their own different proposals in terms of their offers around the localization of the nuclear build. However, as I had indicated earlier, that as one of the strong pillars of the nuclear energy policy is that localization is a factor, is one of the strongest factors. And we're looking closely into localization of the technology. So what we saw is the matter of, what we saw is a matter that the Russian Federation, in terms of its experience in this work, they are estimating that at least $10 billion would be invested in South Africa for localization, for readiness of the industry. And I think we should consider this. This is not part of the cost of the program. This is what the Russians are proposing to invest into the South African economy to make sure that the South African industry is ready to participate fully into the nuclear build program when it is started. And so I think that's a comment I'd like to make. And any of these vendor countries will make various proposals around what their localization content is based on their experiences. And as government, when we deal with this work and analyze it to make recommendations for whichever procurement process that would be approved in the future, all of these factors will be taken into account. Thank you.
My apologies, I missed out on the one from Times News and the question about there's a carrier is going to be carried by the customer. I think it's important that South Africa and the government have a policy of user pay principle. So the customers will pay for it, and hence why it's important looking to the various financial models around. If you build a coal power station, what is it going to cost you to pay it off in its lifespan vis-a-vis that of nuclear, for instance. So that's all part of your equation need to look. And it's not something new only for the nuclear build program. The current renewable energy IPP program, us as customers are paying for renewable energy. You're paying for the Medupi that's when it's come online and Cthulhu when it's come online. The current run programs, the current run power stations, we are paying for that. It's part of the X number of cents per kilowatt that you're paying. So that's built into the equation. But remember, it's also for us to be important that for some of our current power stations is becoming outdated to the extent where they need to be scrapped. So we need to replace that. So to replace something is like replacing your own vehicle. You can't compare the price you paid 10 years ago for your X model vehicle now replacing it with a new model, exactly the same we have to do. So you have to pay that extra installment. You compare 10 years back installment vis-a-vis this year's installment, it's going to be totally different. So same year, customer will pay, hence why it's important also to look at the long-term influence of that on our customers. Sorry, I missed out. No, so I just wanted to
Okay, thank you, ladies and gentlemen. I think we've come to the end of this media briefing. We do have Mr. Mbambo and Mr. Mabongo who will be available to do interviews, one-on-ones beyond this. Mr. DeLange is insisting on one last question.
Can you please respond to my question on whether you already poisoned the process with your close association with Rosatom?
Thank you, Dr. Barnett. In responding to the question, I need to point out that South Africa has not poisoned the process by engaging with the Russian Federation in terms of signing the intergovernmental agreement. And in fact, what South Africa is doing is that it is doing the preparatory work which is necessary for South Africa to begin the procurement process. And so, indeed, the process has not been poisoned. The process has not been started. The preparatory work that the Department of Energy is doing, it is necessary. It is necessary that we do this work because when you get to a point where you have to make a procurement decision, if you had not done this necessary preparatory work, then you will not be able to come with very concrete and sound recommendations that will enable decision making to be made in the process. In fact, what has happened is that this type of a preparatory work, in my view, it enhances the South Africans' ability to deal with the procurement of a nuclear program. And I need to highlight that the procurement of a nuclear program is a complex matter, complex technical matter that is governed by international treaties of which South Africa is a member of. And we are making sure that in line with our obligations to these international treaties, we execute the process in line with our obligations and in line with our local legislation on the procurement process. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We have closed.
Tanya, would you take the last one from Cape Town? The last one, very last.
One only, please.
As a pleegtog. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Tandy. Carol again. I'm just coming back to this issue of not whether procurement has started, but whether a decision that there will be a procurement has been taken. So could it be possible that the Cabinet Subcommittee or your technical committee could come to the conclusion that there will be no nuclear procurement, or is that not one of the options? Will there be nuclear procurement as we know it from today? Thanks.
Yeah, that was the last one, Tandy. Thank you. You can close it from our side.
Thank you very much, Dr. Barnett, and the members of the media for this question. I think we've said here repeatedly that yes, indeed, there will be a procurement process, and the work that the department is doing is in preparation towards that procurement process. And we've highlighted here that various models exist in the international space of the procurement process, and South Africa would review all of this and choose whichever procurement process it chooses to implement the nuclear program. And that decision will be made in future. The work that the department is doing seeks to inform that process. So, indeed, I confirm to you that there will be a procurement process. Which procurement process? I've indicated there's different models that are being used internationally when you're procuring a nuclear program, and those get informed by the various countries' national interest as to how each of those countries want to roll out their nuclear build program. And this will apply to South Africa as well. Government will take a decision and say, what is our national interest? What is our policy saying? What are the key factors that we consider in rolling out this process? And government will then decide. This is the procurement process that is going to be implemented in rolling out the program. So I think I had provided assurance to the media colleague that yes, there will be a procurement process. Once that procurement process has been approved, information will be made available as to what procurement process has South Africa chosen to implement a nuclear build program. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We do have some refreshments around the corner here, and we thank you all very much for being here to share with us today.